If your transitional housing program feels unstable, chaotic, or constantly reactive, I want you to hear this clearly, because the problem is not your heart, and the problem is not your residents. And the problem isn't even that the transitional housing program doesn't work. The problem is that most operators were never given a blueprint. Welcome to Live for Free, where we transform lives through real estate. And in today's episode, I'm going to walk you through a HUD-aligned blueprint for transitional housing that actually works, not in theory, but in real operations. So be sure to stay with me until the end, because I'm going to show you how to design supportive services so they are required, measurable, and effective without turning your program into something rigid or dehumanizing. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, most operators feel overwhelmed because they are managing symptoms instead of systems. They're responding to behavior instead of the building structure. They're reacting to crisis instead of designing prevention. And then they're negotiating the rules. And I know what that's like because I've done that before too. But negotiating the rules instead of enforcing clarity. And here's why. Most programs are built around housing first, not around outcomes. So when you look at outcomes versus housing, then you really are setting your residents up the right way so that they can be successful. But transitional housing is not about providing housing indefinitely. So understand that. It's about stabilizing people long enough to transition them. And you get to determine that based off of what HUD says. HUD says that transitional housing is a time-limited housing opportunity that pairs basically the required supportive services to the individual and designs it with the intent of giving stability and being able to provide self-sufficiency, as well as transitioning them into permanent housing. That is what it means. And at the end of the day, that means you're going to have structure. And structure is not an option. It's actually the foundation. So now that you understand basically what we are working with, the blueprint really starts with the outcomes. So before you start talking about property, how many beds, how many people, I need you to be able to answer this question. What does success look like for someone who completes your program? Because when you can answer that question, then you can set the stage moving forward. We're not talking about survival. We're not even talking about them simply staying out of trouble. We want to provide real outcomes for individuals. So when we talk about that, we're talking about being able to give them stable income, whether it's something that you're helping them do with employment agencies, or you're giving them ways in which they can get that stable income. They've got improved life skills. They're not just simply not prepared for being in housing. You've given them skills to be able to do that, like how to cook and other things like that. You're also improving their ability to manage themselves. That is a critical piece that you'll need to consider, as well as making sure they're ready for a home of their own. And then you'll be able to put them into some type of permanent housing. So if you cannot articulate outcomes like that, then you cannot design services. And if you cannot design services, you will actually unintentionally become the service. So we're not wanting to put you in that position. We want to help you be successful. And that's the question you need to be able to answer. So we're going to go through the 5 parts that is necessary for your blueprint for to have your program aligned. And the first thing I'll share, and I don't know if I'm gonna give you all 5 right now, maybe you just have to go to my school channel and pick it up and see what the other 2 pieces that you need or not. But let's just see if we'll get to them or not. The first one clearly is being able to define the population and the purpose, because transitional housing fails when it tries to serve everyone. I've seen people get into this space, I want to love everybody. I want to help everybody. You cannot. You must clearly define who this program is for, who it's not for, and that's probably the biggest part where I see a lot of people getting in trouble, and then what stage of life or recovery it supports. Once you have clarity around that, that clarity is going to protect not only you as an operator, but it's going to protect your residents. So making sure you have that first is critical. The second thing you want to make sure that you have is that time-limited structure, that you need to be able to know exactly what we're working with. Now, I don't want you rushing it, trying to push people through, because you can't do things in like a few weeks, but I want you just to be intentional as it relates to that. That's knowing how long they're going to stay, what the phases look like in your program, and what those milestones look like for each phase. So you might have something that has stability in the first phase and some skill building in the second, and then you do the transition as your third. But the goal is that you're creating a roadmap for your residents. They know exactly what they're getting when they get with you. They know they're not just going to stay forever in your housing if you're creating transitional housing. Now, if you're doing something else, then you might not be transitional housing. You might just be shared housing or a rooming house, a boarding house. You might just be those things. But those are the type of things you need to look for. And a third thing that you need to have is you need to have some form of required supportive services. Now, when I say it's required, I'm not saying that it's punitive. Basically saying that it must be something built with that program design in mind. So you could have supportive services that are like case management, which, by the way, you don't have to do all these. I'm just saying these are some examples, and you might not do them directly, but you have people coming in who could be helping with the case management, someone who could be helping with employment or income planning, even budgeting and or competency development, making sure they are competent to be able to do the things that's necessary. And of course, life skills and conflict management, and then having a way in which you can navigate that permanent housing. So when services are optional, then you have outcomes that are optional. So our goal is to make these things required. Now, as I mentioned, I wasn't going to share all of the points, but let me just touch on this one briefly, because in order for it to be successful, you must have some way in which you're tracking the outcomes. Documentation is everything. I tell people all the time, make sure that you have that down on paper, how you're documenting their success. Their success could be anything around how they're participating in the program, what milestones they have met, when they met them, any barriers that they might have gone through as you were creating this, and any adjustments that you need to make. But the goal is that you're documenting everything. And then as you do that, then you can see how ready someone could be for transition. And that's what you want to make sure that you're doing, because this not only protects the program, but it protects the residents. And your goal is to create a kick-butt program that agencies and other people are going to want to partner with you in. And that's what I want to help you create. Now, as we look at the last piece, you must have some form of an exit strategy in place. Now, that is ideally making sure that they know where they're going next, what does it look like actually to be ready, and what type of things do they need as far as support after they leave. And a lot of people miss the mark on that. I've seen programs put in place that either A, put them in there and they stay forever, which I've been there before. I know what it's like to do that. And I've completely, as I've seen, because where my heart is, I want to be able to give them something powerful. So we've shifted a lot from that model. And then just being able to get to a place where if it's not this, then you are definitely giving them something that is checking on them afterwards. Because if you're not coming back and just checking to see how they are doing or building something in that creates that, then the likelihood of them falling off, that can happen. And I don't want to see that happen. And so as you're thinking about that, I'm not going to share all the details on this piece here, that exit strategy. If you want more on how that looks, come join our school community. You can reach us at tonischool.com. That's TONISKOOL.com. When you come there, other purpose-driven leaders are there, and we could talk specifically about what type of exit strategy you can create and how you do it the right way so you do not fail. So go ahead, when you reach out to me, be sure to let me know you're wanting that exit strategy, and I'll be sure to share that with you. So now that we've gone through some key things so you understand what you're looking for when you're putting this blueprint together, I need you to understand that most people, when they get into this, most people will never say that the program that you're creating is not successful if you follow these points. You make sure you build in for that so that by the time people are exiting your program, they clearly see the strategy and they clearly can say, yes, that worked. And you can show those outcomes. Because guess what? As you create the right transitions for individuals, you're going to start building momentum, and momentum for people to get results. And when you get that momentum, not only are you going to create confidence, but that confidence is going to create change. And that's what you want to be able to do at the end of the day. So if this episode blessed you and you got some clarity around what it is that you're doing in transitional housing, go ahead and subscribe and turn on the notifications so that you can be informed as we put out new content, because we've got a whole new series we're getting ready to start, and I don't want you to miss it. And of course, you know how to reach us at tonischool.com. That's TONISKOOL.com, so you can be with other operators who want to learn how to create successful transitional housing programs. And I look forward to seeing you there.